Did you know that God's Love Revealed is not just a talk show, but it is a branch of the Garden of Life Enrichment Center, which is a 501c3 organization that ministers to the whole man, spirit, soul, and body. Through our mentor classes, our writing retreats, our music programs for our youth, our health and wellness awareness workshop, and our human trafficking awareness workshop. As we move forward, your support through our sponsorship packages and our monthly partnership will help us to continue the support of our programs. So consider joining us today as we change lives in a changing world. If you would like to give to the Garden of Life Enrichment Center, you can contact us by going to our website at gardenoflifeec.org or email us at gardenoflife18@gmail.com. A new horizon is waiting for you. A new day is dawning for love that's true. God's love revealed. God's love revealed. God's love revealed. Let him reveal his love to you. Hello, and welcome to God's Love Revealed, where the love of God is made alive in you. I'm Minister Stephanie Turner. My guest on today, she escaped death by calling on the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. She was shot 6 times, laying in a pool of blood, bleeding out, and she began to praise God to stay conscious. You'll understand why I call her a walking miracle. My guest on today is Jasmine West. Welcome, Jasmine, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited about your story. You know, I listened to your story, and it was just so amazing. And I was like, God, that is so powerful. You know, it was his love that kept you. So I want you to talk to me and tell me exactly what happened. Share it with us today.
Well, on June 1st, 2002, I was just 21 years old, just turned 21.
Okay.
And I was living with my best friend. We were roommates.
Okay.
And she had 2 small children.
Okay.
Her and the father were like an on and off type of relationship, but co-parented well together.
Okay.
She was a good mom. He was a good father.
Okay.
You know, on his weekends to have the kids, they would do family stuff. On her weekends, he would kind of want to be, you know, kind of do his own thing. Well, this particular weekend, she had just started working a second job, so she just kind of wanted to be like kid-free and to relax. So his sister had graduated from high school the night before they went, and then that Saturday she came home and she's like, you know, I just kind of want to hang out, you know, no children, just enjoy the day, you know. So I was like, okay, that's fine. We get dressed, she gets dressed, and she has his car. So she's like, Jazz, can you take me to take his car back to the house? So I was like, okay, yeah. So we take it back. I follow her to take it back in her car. She gets there. He wasn't happy that she didn't want to, you know, stay and hang out and do whatever with him and the children. So they had a little altercation. I left out. I went to the car. She comes back and she gets in the car. She's kind of rattled up and she's sad because she was one of those type of people that she don't want you to be mad at her.
Oh, okay.
She don't want you to be mad. She don't want you to be upset. She don't want you to be.
Right.
She wants to make everybody happy if she could.
Okay.
You know? So I'm like, well, Miranda, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Let's just, you know, go. We went to the grocery store. We spent the whole day just kind of hanging out. We car wash, all kind of stuff. We get back to the house. I cook, so I was cooking. We had a couple other friends that were guys I grew up with.
Okay.
Guy named Fred, and he brought his best friend with him.
Okay.
And his best friend's name was Kevin. So we're hanging out, watching television, talking about everything.
Okay.
Fred and Kevin were they grew up in church too. One grew up in a Baptist church, one grew up in an
Okay.
apostolic church. So there was always conversation on
About the
what
Lord.
was different
Okay,
or
okay.
And so we talked about everything that night, everything. And towards the end of the night, I hear a knock on the door.
Now, this was at your house, right?
At where me and Miranda live.
Okay, that's right.
And she looks at me and she's like, Jasmine, she's like, don't answer it. It's Ryan. He's going to go away. So at that point, I'm like, don't answer it. So I was like, okay. So he's knocking. And I'm like, Miranda, I don't think he's going away. So then he starts talking through the door and he's like, Miranda, you're making this harder than what it has to be.
So was he jealous?
Yes.
Okay.
But he didn't even have a reason to be in that moment because the guy friends were my friends.
Okay.
There was no relationship, no.
Okay.
So he's talking through the door and I'm like, okay, he's not going to go away, Miranda. I'm going to call the police and that's going to be the end of it. She's like, no, don't do that. If you do that, he'll take my kids. I guess they were going through like some custody stuff.
Yeah. So
long story short, he leaves, goes down the stairs, and she's like, see, I told you he leaves. We are talking, and I hear, because in the apartments that we lived in, you could hear through the walls. So I hear him come back up the stairs, and at this point, I heard him cock a gun.
My God.
I heard it go, so I'm like, Miranda, he has a gun. She's like, no, he don't. He's just probably upset because he knows that we're in here. Still, don't call the police, he's going to go away. Maybe a minute or two later, one kick. Deadbolt, chain, everything comes off the door. He walks in, and Fred was sitting on the arm of the couch, which was right by the door, and no words were exchanged, couple of face expressions. He looks at Fred, he pulls the gun, and he just shoots Fred in his head.
My God.
So I watched Fred's eyes roll back, and he just kind of like caught himself, and he fell off the couch, and I knew like, oh my God, he is dead. Like I saw death leave his body.
Okay.
And he shot at Kevin twice. He hit him in his lungs and his heart. And then he was kind of unloading at me.
Really?
And it was just like pop, pop, one after another. And she was standing next to him. And she kept looking at me, telling me she was sorry.
Oh, my God.
And she was begging him to stop. And she kept saying, no, no. She kept telling me, Jasmine, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And he was just unloading.
On you?
On me. He shot at me 11 times. He hit me 6.
My God.
She takes off running into the room. They're back there for a minute. And in my mind, I'm like, he's not going to shoot her. Maybe they'll argue. He'll rough her up and, So they're back there for a minute. And then I just heard a single gunshot. And it was just like, pow. Wow. And I was sitting back there and I was like, he killed her. Like he shot her. He shot her. And I knew though, but I was still awake, and I was like, if he's going to come back out, I have to play dead, because if I don't, he's going to kill me.
Right.
So I just kind of like slouched down in the couch, and I kind of leaned my head to the side, and I closed my eyes like I was dead. And he walked out. He didn't run. He walked down the stairs. We were on the 3rd floor. So he walks down, and I waited, because you can see and hear everything in our apartment. So I knew if I got up, he would see me and he would come back up. He sat outside for a minute. The detectives ended up telling me later he called his mother and told his mother what he did.
Wow.
While he was sitting out front. And I waited for him to drive off, and when I looked over at Kevin, he was smiling. So I thought he was alive. I get chills every time I think about it. And I was talking to him because the phone was on the couch next to him, and I said, Kevin, you got to call. We're going to be okay. You need to call. And he wasn't moving, but he was smiling. Wow. I later found out that he died instantly. So to me, that smile let me know he made it. He went on. He went on. And so I got up, and when I got shot 3 times in the chest, so blood was just pouring. And the blood,
so were you not feeling any pain?
No pain. A peace that I couldn't be nobody but God. Just a peace. I got up, I grabbed the phone, I called 911. I sat back down. I held the phone in the same hand that the bullet shattered all the bones, and they told me I would never use this hand again. But I remember holding the phone in that hand. And if you know anything about broken bones, I shouldn't even have been able to grip the phone. So when I was holding it and I called and I kind of told them, you know, what happened, I couldn't get my address out. All I could remember was 938,
Wow.
which was the number of the apartment.
So let me ask you, go ahead. I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So did you feel anything? Did you have felt danger? Did you feel a warning before any of this happened?
I would come home, and the way the apartment went, we were on the 3rd floor, so the stairs would go one way, and then they would turn, and they would go up, and then they would turn, and then they would go up to the 3rd level.
Okay.
And I would come home from work, sometimes I would see gargoyles just sitting.
Wow.
And they were staring, and I didn't know at that time
That was Satan.
what I was seeing because I wasn't mature or taught
Right,
that
right.
yet. But later on, I realized, you know, God was like I was seeing the spirits already there.
Yeah.
And they would sit and they would just kind of look, and I would walk past them like, am I tripping? But I remember that, and I remember that, and I remember there were days where I would be coming up the stairs with her children because I would pick them up from daycare.
Yeah.
She would be standing on the balcony, and she would be waving, and it just looked like a movie.
Really?
And little did I know that it was like her spirit was already telling me goodbye.
God.
And at that time, I didn't know. It wasn't until later as I grew.
Hindsight.
I grew, you know, God always brings things back because
remembrance, yes.
I was laying in the bed a few weeks ago, and God reminded me of how warm my blood was when I was bleeding out.
Yeah, because you wasn't feeling any pain.
No pain. And he told me at that time, he's like, I already had you covered.
Wow. So,
Even though I was going through what I was going through, he already had me covered in his blood, and that's why that's one of my most vivid memories.
Wow.
Because he needed me to feel that.
absolutely. So, you know, as I was listening to your testimony earlier, you said that when he kicked down the door, you yelled out, Jesus.
When he kicked in that door, they had asked me later, what was your first thoughts? And the first thing I said when he kicked that door, and I said, Jesus. And I instantly just started repenting.
Really?
I'm like, God, if there's anything, you know, because this is it. This is it. So if this is it, I need to lay it all out. You know, I'm big at righting my wrongs anyway. But at that moment, I was just like, and I was just taught like, Jesus, like, I need you now. I'm dying slowly. Yeah. Like, God, I'm sorry if I didn't line up the way you wanted me to. I mean, everything I could think of. But that whole time, I just kept saying, Jesus, Jesus. And when the ambulance people and the police came in, they told me all my friends were dead because they checked the people that are unconscious first. They're like, you need to tell us who did this to you. So I was heavy, of course. So they picked me up and they put me on this stretcher. And as they were taking me out, I was bleeding. Blood was in my hair, my face, everywhere. Because it was just pouring.
So you was shot
in the face.
In the face?
A hollow point, I don't know if you know a whole lot about those bullets, but when they hit you, they explode.
Wow.
So this was a really big hole. And then I had 3rd-degree burns that slid down this way. Well, he was shooting from this direction. So the bullet should have went through and came this way and would have killed me instantly. But God curved that thing and it went to my neck. And they later removed it out of my neck, maybe like a year or two later. Because they don't take them out right then. Like once they come to the surface, then they'll pull them out. There was also a bullet that went past my heart, and it was lodged in my back. Well, when they pulled it out of my back, it was a hollow point that was closed, and they kept calling it a defective bullet. But I knew that was God, because had that exploded, I'd have been dead.
See, but I believe in my heart that when you called on the name of the Lord, the scripture talks about the righteous calling on the name of the Lord, they shall be safe. And I do believe that's what's God's love showing you. I got you. And you said you felt his warmth. You felt like warm blood.
Yeah. And I was calm.
Just
I looked
the peace
up
of God.
when they were taking me down on the stretcher, they looked up, and I looked at the wall, and the kids' pictures were on the wall. And they said, you know, you need to tell us who did this. And I looked up, and I said it was the kid's father. And the sheriff looked at me, and he gave me a nod, and they took me down 3 flights of stairs head first. And they put me in the ambulance, and they took me to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, I remember them flying the doors open, and they were running me down this hall on the stretcher. And when I got back to the room, it was a bunch of doctors, nurses, and they were looking, and they were like, she's awake.
They couldn't believe it.
they kept saying, she's awake, and I'm laying there like, yeah, I'm dying. Can y'all help me? You know.
And you're not feeling any pain?
No pain for a whole day. I was calm. Didn't even know that I had got shot in my face. When,
that was the peace of God, I tell you.
They got me what they called like set up, where they had cut my clothes off and stuff, and my mother was my emergency contact, so they called her, and she usually doesn't even answer her phone at night, and she happened to that night. So when she got there, she walked in the room and she was screaming at the top of her lungs, and I'm like, why are you screaming? She's like, your face. I'm like, what's wrong with my face?
And you can't even tell. It doesn't look like anything.
And it was wide. I have just a small line right here. Yeah.
So did they have to do plastic surgery?
They did a little, they cut the burn off, pulled it together at the smile line and glued it. But it's still like, if you would have came and saw me, I still ooze blood for days. So like you would sit me up and I would pour, because they don't sew those up. They don't band, they let them bleed out. And I had lost so much blood that all of my veins collapsed, so they couldn't get any IVs in or any medicine to get me to clot. So they had told my mother and the chaplain to come to be by my bedside because, you know, for me to fade.
They was expecting you to die.
They were expecting me to die. And
God. My God, but God.
And I remember reading in my medical records that was at 10:46 p.m. and that was the same time that I was born.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and my mother was sitting there and the chaplain was sitting there, and I kept asking, you know, am I going to be okay? And they would tell me, I don't know. And I didn't want to go to sleep, even though I was tired, because they couldn't promise me I would wake up.
So they sedated you?
I would sing. Kurt Carr's Sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I would sing it over and over in my head, because at that time that was like my favorite.
So is that the song that you were singing when you was lying there in the blood?
Singing, I sung it. I just kept singing it in my head over and over again. The part that I remember most is, we will praise you for the rest of our days. I didn't know then that God was already telling me, like, I got this.
Yeah, you ain't going nowhere.
This is mine.
Yes.
This is my story. This is my testimony. This is my pain, my tears, and this is my glory.
Yeah.
And every time I hear that song now, I get chills. And I years later had a son, and I named him Judah because of that.
Of the praise.
Because of praise. Praise kept me alive. Me, you know, laying there and knowing, like, okay, this is nothing but God. I felt no pain for a whole day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
As people came in to see me, the lady told me, the nurse came back, she said, you have 97 visitors and you can have 2 at a time. Like, I don't think I even know 97
people.
But as they brought people back and people were crying and falling out screaming, and I was just comforting people. I kept telling people, I'm okay, I'm all right.
That was the peace and the love of God.
And eventually they ended up sedating me so I would rest. But and when you're sedated, you can still hear everything going on, but you're pretty much, your body sleep. Your mind's not asleep, but your body's sleep. And I would hear people like crying and sobbing, and every hour I just got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger.
To God be glory.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I tell you, God loves his people. And he said he would tell those things before they spring forth. And so that vision or whatever you were seeing, or those gargoyles, the enemy was trying to tell you then he was going to try to do something. But God. See, the enemy has a plan to try to destroy the plan that God has. But the Bible tells us what the enemy meant for bad, God turned around and make it for good. So the Lord he loves you, and he has a plan for your life. And I don't care, I mean, that is so amazing to go through something like that traumatic and come out with praise and encouragement. So have you talked to the young guy who did that?
Yes. His father is a pastor of a really large church, and for years I was one of those people that ministers couldn't do anything wrong. Their kids weren't allowed to do anything wrong, and it wasn't until I had my son that I realized you can teach and teach and teach your child, but the way they want to go, they're going to go. So I was going through trauma therapy.
Okay.
And because I was bitter. And I couldn't even love my son because I was just so bitter
was
at life
angry,
and
yeah.
angry. So I sat down with this father first, and I had to tell him, I hated you. I didn't understand. And
Yeah, because it came through a child, son of a pastor, and this happened. How could this happen?
Yeah, and I was just like, you know what? I had to realize you're human too.
That's right.
He's human.
Absolutely.
And you can teach him everything you know, and he can still do whatever he wants. And I had sat down with him just to tell him, like, I forgive you. Please forgive me for hating you for all these years. And he encouraged me to come to his church. And I was like, I don't think I'm comfortable with that. But God woke me up every day that week. He said, you going to church.
See.
So I got up that Sunday. I went. He had a service. He actually spoke about him getting shot and his brother getting shot and killed. And the service was just like amazing.
So
and
they had a lot of traumatic stuff happening in their family.
And I watched God like working on me and him as
at
I
the
sat
same
there.
time. My God.
And so I had a pool to go every Sunday. I went every Sunday for a year.
Well, God was working on something.
He was getting it because I was so angry. And there were Sundays I would sit and I would cry. And June 1st happened to be on a Sunday, the anniversary, and I was there. Her birthday happened to be on a Sunday, and I was there. And I would sit sometimes.
Miranda's birthday was on June?
And her birthday's November 26th.
Okay.
So that year, it happened to be on a Sunday.
Okay.
So I was sitting there, and I was thinking, like, I'm sitting in this church on your birthday, and I'm at peace. Like, I'm at peace. So I asked his father, do you think it would be okay if I wrote him? Because I don't understand the why.
So you wrote him?
I wrote him, yeah.
Wow.
And I was nervous at first, and when he emailed me back first.
Okay.
And he told me, would it be okay if I write you, because he's been in prison for 18 years, so he doesn't know all of technology.
Absolutely.
And they only get like a certain amount of time on so I got a P.O. box.
Okay.
I sent him the address to the P.O. box, and he wrote me a long letter. It was about 7 pages, the first letter.
So what did he say?
And in the first, he started the letter off apologizing.
Wow.
And after 15 years, I got an apology, and it's a feeling that I can't even explain, because you never think you're going to get that from somebody who tried to kill you. Wow. And he wrote, and he told me, he was like, I always felt like, you were the person that was kind of like, I don't want to say like take her away, but the stronger friend. So when something was going on, she would run to me. So he's like, I hated you, and I wanted you to die. And he said, but just let me tell you why. So he cleared the air in the letter, and he wrote every detail. He wrote every if, ands, or buts I could have thought of, he wrote. Wow. And we wrote back and forth about 4 times, and I was able to forgive him. No hate in my heart.
Oh, that's so awesome.
They wanted to give him the death penalty because he had killed so many people, and then he was a pastor's son. And
so did you tell him not to? Or?
I fought against the death penalty. I did not want them to kill him, because I'm not God. I can't take or give life. Yeah. And me being upset with him taking a life, and then I'm going to take a life and sit and watch it? No. Yeah. And then trial would have been so traumatic. I was in the city county building 3 times a week, and we seen crime scene pictures and autopsy videos, and
that was overwhelming. It had to be.
And I wanted let the casket memories be the last for the families. Yeah. And then even on the flip side, because sometimes we worry about us, like in our family, because we got hurt, we don't realize that his family's hurting too.
That's right, absolutely.
They now have a murderer that is from their family, and he's gone away from them, and all those other things too. Yeah. They don't need to hear the horrific details.
Absolutely.
Let
it go.
Let mine be enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And it took me 2
years. And if you can let it go,
anybody can.
That's right.
It took me 2 years to save his life.
Okay.
2 years.
Okay.
And we wrote back and forth. I ended up sending him like a care package just for being willing to open up and share with me, because I have people out here I could talk to, counselors, therapists. He's in prison. They're not going to send nobody to make sure he's okay. But I wanted him to know that I appreciate him opening up to help me heal.
Okay.
And I noticed after that, going through that, I was on medication for years just to numb the pain. then I wrung myself off because I wanted to go through that in my natural state.
Absolutely.
Because I wanted to really be free. God has showed me that unforgiveness is like a cancer.
It is.
And it will eat and eat and
away.
eat and eat you away until it kills you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it hurts you.
I couldn't love my son. And because I was just so bottled up and angry. And after I started going through this process, I promise you, I was not on a diet at all. I lost 18 pounds.
So you was carrying the weight of that thing.
In the natural and in the spiritual.
Absolutely.
And when I let it go, God showed me, he's like, I told you.
Oh, wow.
Just trust me. Just, you know, and I was so afraid to go through it because I didn't want to be depressed and I didn't want to hurt. And I honestly, I don't think I really wanted to all the way let it go because I needed it to make sense. And sometimes it don't have to make sense if it's God's story.
But you know, the nature of God's love has been revealed to you.
Yes.
You know, and that's what this show is all about, to help people to see that people can go through a lot of tragedies. They can go through a lot of things. But at the end of the day, if they can just trust God, to get them through whatever their hard place is, to get them through that, they'll be all right at the end of the day. You know, I haven't been through what you've been through, but I've gone through some things. And God is always faithful. He's always faithful. And see, the thing about it, God is not a controller. And so that young guy chose to do whatever he chose to do. And it wasn't God that did it, but he chose to do it. But God can still turn it around. For the good, for you, for your child, even for him, and for those who are listening and watching this broadcast. Because some people are walking in unforgiveness, and they need to know, if God has forgiven us, truly we can forgive somebody else. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I always imagine, like, if God was to turn his back on me and say, nope, I don't forgive you. Nope, you've done too much. And when I needed him most, I can't be a hypocrite and want him to forgive me and I not forgive others, you know? And I always tell people when they ask me about this, because sometimes we get so mad at God when things happen to us, instead of being mad, ask God, what do you want me to learn from this? What do you want me to take from this? Because you could be going through it just to build your relationship, because now I don't have nowhere to run. I have to give it to God, and I have to let him love me through this.
Absolutely. Jasmine, I just want to thank you for coming on the show to share this awesome testimony. I call you a walking miracle.
Thank you.
God's love is amazing in your life. Continue to shine and let him do great things. He's going to use this testimony, and I believe in take it all over the world to show forth his goodness. So thank you again for coming, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tune in to Gospel Revealed every Saturday at 5 p.m. on Preach the Word Network TV.